Welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, where today we will discuss Chapter 5 of Whither Are We Traveling? The Closed Corporation.
Ladies and gentlemen, brethren all, welcome to the Working Tools Podcast, a casual conversation around Freemasonry. First, it's important to note that our thoughts and opinions are our own and do not reflect those of our Grand Lodge or respective craft or concordant bodies. Please connect with us and ask questions via our website at theworkingtoolspodcast.com.
Today on the Working Tools Podcast, we have our usual band of hosts, very worshipful brother David Colbeth from King Solomon Lodge number 160 in Auburn, worshipful brother Stephen Chung from Prince Charles 153 in Kelowna, British Columbia, worshipful brother Jarrod Dunham from Penticton 147 in also British Columbia, and I'm Matt Appel, and I'm with Mill Creek Lodge number 243, and we meet in Montlake Terrace, Washington. So we are continuing our discussion of the Whither Are We Traveling booklet with Chapter 5, The Closed Corporation, which is largely about the size of individual lodges for as far as membership goes. I guess I will lead off with a story that I don't know if it's pertinent or not, but it came to me while I was reading this, that I visited a lodge in Pennsylvania once, and they were talking about merging with another lodge at the meeting I was at. And I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but it was basically their lodge had fallen below 300 members, and they were kind of panicked. And so they were hoping that the merger would get them above 500 with both lodges together. And I was like, at the time, my lodge was below 100, and I was just like, 500 members? So there's definitely different perspective in different parts of the country on that one. Did you guys have thoughts on this chapter? Or?
I'd be curious to know what they do with 300 people or 500 people.
They probably need that many to pay for their building.
Well, they do have a nice building.
I'm pretty sure I do know what they do. They join Scottish Rite and Shrine and New York Rite. Every other group, right?
You know, isn't that Chapter 6? That's Chapter 6.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to read ahead yet.
So
I don't know what. I mean, yeah, could we use a few more? We're at about 80, I think, right now. Could we use a few more members? Yeah, we could. I think probably 100, 120 is probably would be about right, because you get that 80-20 rule working. And you know, if we had just a couple extra guys, I think we'd be set. I don't need another 200 people. I don't need a double in size necessarily. And then I guess it also depends on if you are comfortable being master every 5 years or every 3 years or every 10 years, whatever. And or letting, something we don't explore is letting a master be master for 4, 5, 10 years.
Well, I don't know. You have 100 on your roster now. How many show up on a regular basis?
Well, we're about 80, but yeah, we've done kind of the math on it, and we get about a 50% attendance of those that could come. So we have like 80 or so members, and then there's 40 or so that couldn't. They live out of town or they're aged or whatever. So out of 40 or so, we get high teens, low 20s. So we get pretty close to 50% at most events and meetings. It's not always the same guys. It kind of rotates. There's probably 10 to 15 kind of core people that are always there. And then there's another 5 to 10 or so that rotate through here and there. But
yeah, see, we have just under 50 on our roster, and maybe I think there's a dozen of them that aren't, well, maybe 15 actually, I think, that couldn't come because they don't live here. They live in they've moved away for work or whatever else, right? And we only end up getting 15 to 25, and that's a pretty good range. I know there's a 10 person gap there, but it can often be that one meeting we got 15, next we got 24, right? But for the most part, let's say average at 20 per meeting. So, and we find that it would be nice to have a few more active bodies that would participate and share some of that workload. And then the other thing is if you're not growing, how many guys are actually going through the line and becoming master? Or are we, like you say, like you guys or whatever you indicated, maybe recycling yourself every few years?
I think the numbers, at least in our area, have shown that through demits and passings, we're not keeping up. And I guess that's also the element that we're not necessarily, new guys aren't coming in and fast enough. And so again, I'm not looking to triple or quadruple or have 500 members necessarily. I think that probably is excessive. But again, when you only have 80, we used to have 100, 120 when I first joined. And now we're down to about 80 or so. And again, what's the magic number? I don't know what the magic number is. I think if we didn't have a building to deal with, we could probably be even smaller, if you will. We could probably get by with 40 members or so if half of them were active.
But if you didn't have a building, then you'd be paying rent somewhere. And, the lodges that are just paying rent somewhere seem to, struggle with that aspect of it. Either it costs a lot more or they meet less because every time they meet, they have a charge to them, right? So,
yeah, but I think that would be baked into the dues, right? That's the theory of one of the things they talk about it. Or what you guys were saying, that they're going to have all these guys so we can pay for the building.
mm-hmm.
Well, it's the same idea. How you got to have enough guys to pay for the rental of the hall, I guess. And if their hall rental costs $1,200 a year and you have 100 members or 12, you just divide it out. Like you just divide out the math, and whatever it costs for the rental is what it costs. That would be a true pass through. Where if building costs, often people say, well, the building should pay for itself, which I agree. I think it should. But then is there, maybe it's not monetary, but maybe it's physical, where you show up and be part of the building or part of helping to clean or to help to coordinate or help to, like we just got chairs the other day and there was 3 of us that did 160 chairs. Where were the other 30 guys? Now it was on a Friday, but still, it's just for all those guys that listen, I'm not trying to say that that we don't appreciate you. So I know there's some of the guys in our lodge that listen, and it's just one of the things I've written down later is that what does it take to get someone motivated to be part of? And just numbers is one thing. Active, I'd rather have 20 active guys than 200 that aren't.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And personally, I think the ideal number, because we used to have, I think it was 88 on our roster, and we had on average 30 coming out. Right. And those were good times. That was, as they say, many hands make for lighter work. Right. And that very much was the case. And there was always somebody new who wanted to go through the chairs. Right. So we didn't, for a number of years, we never struggled with, finding the next guy to go in the line of officers to work his way up. Right. But now it's quite different, and the struggle is real, and the fact that we have to recycle past masters is real. So, how many is enough? I don't know. This thing says that in Canada's 9 jurisdictions, the average membership is 166. I don't know. Is there any? What's the average membership in your district, Jarrod?
Oh, I can do better than that. I've got the average member for the entire jurisdiction.
Oh yeah,
I crunch numbers, baby.
And
the mean membership number for a lodge in British Columbia is 44, and the median is 42.
Oh wow!
So
that's quite off, mind you. This was written, I don't know how long ago was this written.
70 years,
right?
Yeah, 62.
No, 60 years. Sorry, 1960 something, 64.
Right.
And so yeah, it's during the it's written at the peak of membership, not the trough that we've hit now.
Right. So we're down to
Yeah.
3/4 of that
But
number.
once again, right sizing, baby. Here's my question. And this is the thought that always goes through my mind when people talk about their membership. And then they throw in but our active membership. Why are people paying a membership but not coming out to lodge?
That is a good question. I did wonder. So somebody just mentioned like in Australia there's this many, in Puerto Rico there's this many in the average lodge, and whatever in England there's this many in the average lodge. I did find myself wondering, especially when comparing the U.S. numbers or the North American numbers to like England, or whatever, Germany. I think my impression is that we here in North America move much more frequently than Europeans do. Just move house more often. And I wonder how many, like, I mean, gosh, we have 135 guys on our roster right now, or Master Masons in our lodge. And I'm willing to bet 60 of them don't live in the state of Washington. And of the ones who do, probably another 5 or 10 are far enough away that they're never going to come to a meeting, like David was saying.
Right.
And people keep their membership in their mother lodge or a lodge they had a great time in or whatever. And either they bought a life membership or they keep paying their dues and just keep rolling with it, I think. But yeah, I do wonder about some of their names on our roster. When I send out birthday cards or whatever, there are names on our roster that live in the same town I do, who I've never met and pay their dues every year. So I guess I'm grateful. They're deferring the cost of my Masonic experience.
Well,
but
and it's also hard because, I mean, you guys live in the third most populous country in the world. So, talking membership numbers in the United States and then comparing them to other countries is, I mean, a bit difficult. But this article was written in the States, and they were talking back when you had 300 and 400 members in a lodge. And I agree. Like, the point I think he makes in it is that, you just, why do you need big lodges?
There is a paragraph in there. I might be jumping ahead now too, but there's a section about, there's a name for it. The number of people you can have that are good friends in your life. There's a sociological principle there.
Yeah. And it's 36, I think.
It's something like that. Yeah. That you can have that are people you're actually close to, not just names you recognize, but people you're close enough to whatever, tell stories with.
Yeah.
And yeah, that seems to be a good size for an active number in a lodge to me, that you would, and hopefully people have friends outside a lodge, but that aside, it seems like you would want to, have a core group there that is of that dimension, or that order of magnitude.
One of the things just a simple thing I underlined was that in the past, the brethren would actually receive a summons to attend their lodge because it was worth attending. And I think in my 15 years as a Mason, I think we received, I wouldn't actually call them summons, although I did send out as a master, I did send out 2 summons for special events. I just wanted to make sure that they had something as a true invite. I think we've received, though, half a dozen at the most in 15 years, any kind of written request to attend lodge. And I think some of those kind of traditions are lost as well.
You don't get a monthly notice?
Nope.
From the day I joined, well, I guess, yeah, basically from the day, I mean, I used to get them in the mail. Now I get them in email, but every month I get a notice from the secretary saying the Worshipful Master requests your presence at our next regular meeting and it lists what we're going to do and stuff.
You guys don't do that, David? Not even by email?
I wouldn't say it's a regular thing.
No.
On occasion, we'll get something, but it's not a regular automatic thing.
Isn't there something,
Mr. Secretary? How do you?
There's something in your code that says you guys have to set? Like, isn't there something in our custody? We're supposed to have ours out and include the Grand Lodge within, I think it's 2 weeks before your stated meeting, something like that.
There's notice for emergent meetings, but your regular meeting is on your regular night, and there's nothing in the code that says you have to send you don't even have to read your notice at that meeting because it's your regular meeting. Right. You're expected to be there. But yeah, our secretary every and when we have an emergent meeting, he'll send out another notice in the email that says, but that what it is in the code is you have to give 5 days notice before. You have to give at least 5 days notice for an emergent meeting.
Right. And it's interesting. We just had this conversation. I threw it out there at the Board of General Purposes to talk about whether or not we want to go back to mailing them out. And man, that's going to cost so much money, right? The envelopes, the stamps, it's going to cost a couple of bucks extra per person. I said, add it to my dues. I'd be happy to do it, right? I used to relish in getting that paper copy and reading it, right? But it didn't seem to excite enough guys to warrant much of conversation on it. Got kind of squashed. But I think it gives you're right. We have to have reason to go. And one of those reasons is just getting that personal invite in there, but and having quality content. I'd much rather have a smaller, better quality lodge than a larger lodge. I mean, if that's what they want to, base this on is it just numbers or is it, content? I'd go for content every day.
I don't think that currently we are in too much of a risk of having lodges that are too big. Because if you scroll through our numbers, there's 2 lodges in all of British Columbia and Yukon that are over 100. Nope, sorry, 3. I missed one. So 3 out of 100, and we have we have 132 active lodges. So out of that, 3 have more than 100 members. Some push close to 100, but yeah, when half of them are under 42. So somehow I think we've solved this problem.
I thought it was kind of cool at one point. He talks about when lodges get small enough, that's a problem that's going to solve itself or something like that. I was like, wow, that's a brutal assessment there.
But I underlined that. I underlined that part and I said, when? How long is that going to take? 10 years, 20 years for a lodge to finally go away? that maybe shouldn't be.
Oh, they take forever, man.
Until Jarrod's there.
Trying to get rid of a lodge that close.
Yeah, no, I mean it's interesting. I mean, if you could financially support a lodge of 20 guys, why the heck not?
Yeah. What I think the point he wants to make in this is that you can have lots of Masons in an area, just have more lodges for them to work in. So that, good on you. If you can have 100, 120 people coming, like if you literally have 120 active members, I mean, there's 3 lodges that could actually be 3 lodges, and I mean, if your population base can handle that, I mean, I don't know where that would be, but
yeah, I do wonder. So when I first joined, our lodge was larger than it is now, but there was talk of there's the RVing club. There's a bunch of guys that went RVing, and there was a bunch of guys who rode motorcycles, and a bunch of guys who enjoyed shooting, and they went shooting and that sort of stuff. And no, we don't do any of that now. There's none of those groups. But I couldn't help but wonder that, if a lodge grows to a size where it could be 2 or 3 lodges, does it just sort of naturally, I don't know what the word is, meiosis into like separate subgroups where you end up having whatever the guys who go shooting together end up making their own little shooting club, and does the lodge naturally pick up other activities, or is it better to have a whole second lodge, third lodge, fourth lodge?
That was one of the questions I wrote down, is how do they differentiate themselves? If there's a lodge on every corner, it's not like we're the Starbucks of Masonry that you can just, oh, you'll go to this lodge and you get the same exact experience. Usually there's something a little bit different. But it was a question I asked the guys when I was visiting Hawaii, and they said that there was, I think, 4 lodges that met in the same building. I probably was told the story before, but I'll tell it again. The secretary, older Japanese Hawaiian gentleman, super funny, subtly funny. And as he was eating, I said, hey, how do you guys differentiate yourself? And he, without taking a beat, without looking up, said, nah, good question. He just kept eating. And they really didn't have a great answer, honestly. And I don't know that I would have a great answer. What if we had 3 lodges in our building? What is it that differentiates? I mean, Matt makes a good point that maybe they're more affiliated lodges, that they have something in common. And I think that's what Europe does a lot of. That's why they have 14,000 lodges, or at least 14,000 members, whatever it is. And supposedly, in our case, California has lots of lodges. They're generating new lodges all the time, but they're affiliated lodges.
I think the word you're looking for is affinity.
Affinity, thank you. Yep. And I guess that's kind of cool, but then all the, all the motorcyclists and all the shooters and all the cops and all the robbers. I mean, everybody gets to go, everybody gets to be together. Isn't that part of what Masonry is supposed to be, that we're all together and we get to be in the meeting with the doctors and lawyers and the shooters and cops and robbers? And
well, my question would be, what is the lifespan of an affinity lodge? Like, is it, if you get enough guys together that can form a lodge, 16 here in BC, they form a lodge, and how long is that lodge going to survive? Like, can it survive long term? Should it survive long term? Should we worry about it? Should lodges, and I guess the question is, is it bad if lodges form and fall within 15 years, as long as membership is doing well? I don't know. Like, I was just,
like overall membership.
Yeah.
If you kind of form and shift and morph, and
if you form an affinity lodge and it survives a dozen years, but then the guys kind of peter out, and it closes, if the membership if the overall membership doesn't decline, is that a bad thing?
I think the success of an affinity lodge would depend a large part on what it's an affinity lodge to, and how well, I mean, as with any other lodge, frankly, how well they, for lack of a better term, market themselves to that affinity group. I know there are affinity lodges. I don't know of one here, but I know of ones in other states that have affinities to like a university. If you can get there's a constant flow of people there, there's a constant level of involvement you could get, that would be great. If it's an affinity lodge to, I don't know, whatever, I'm trying to think of something, whatever, guys who enjoy model railroading, is how do you market yourself? How do you get close to that group of model railroaders? Yeah. I don't know. I will say, as I've said before, that here in Washington, there's at least 2 affinity lodges, one for Filipino Masons and one for Masons of Gaelic descent, Scotch, Irish kind of stuff. And both of those lodges, as I recall, are doing pretty well. And every Filipino Mason I know in the state of Washington is a member of Luz Vermida, number 317. So they're all they're successful from that perspective.
And but also, if they're not continuing to grow, not just because people want to be a member, but they're actually bringing in new Masons. Like the idea that, like with Jarrod's point, that if the jurisdiction as a whole isn't either growing or sustaining, if the affinity lodge gets together for 10 to 15 years and then dissipates, what happens to those members? Did they make new members? Why are they dissipating? Because it's I hate to use the word failed, but maybe just the interest changed. But did those members then go to other lodges back to where they came, and did they make any new members? Are they also connected to a non-affinity lodge? I guess my thing is, like, I'm part of the motorcycle club. I'm part of some other things, but I have a strong connection to my Blue Lodge. And in here I think he talks in the next chapter, again, reading ahead, about the Blue Lodge having a bad name. And I don't think that at all. I think the Blue Lodge is, I say dance with the brung that brung you. But my Blue Lodge is centered to who I am as a Mason. And so if I were to go out and form a new lodge or be part of a new lodge, why am I doing that? I mean, I can go. I'm a master mason. I can go and visit and be part of everything they do, except maybe be an officer.
Because
Official.
you moved into the area.
What's that?
You're doing it because you moved into the area, or you're
Well,
there a lot.
I suppose. I mean, to me, that's a little bit different, though. If I moved across the country, I missed something. If I
So Johnny just dramatically waved his head in the air and then
I don't-
crossed his arms, and it was very impressive.
Well, you're missing the point that he makes in the article, is that the lodges have gotten so big that the members are joining and not able to do anything.
true.
So if you've got a bunch of guys just sitting on the sidelines, make a new lodge, get them through the line, and so but
True.
if
True.
and you see, now I've lost the point I was going to make. But when you say that people go off, that's what I was pointing out, is that maybe an affinity lodge, the interest does wane, and those guys, as I said, as long as overall membership in your jurisdiction, like people will go and find another lodge to belong to, but people go to other lodges or form new lodges because there's something in their current lodge that they're not getting. Maybe you belong to a lodge that doesn't I don't know, maybe they don't pay as close attention to ritual, and you really want to be in a ritual lodge that where ritual is everything, and if you find some like-minded guys, you form a lodge where you guys get together, and I mean, ritual is what you guys practice, God willing.
I will say, if those of you are playing Working Tools podcast bingo, if you want to check off, Appel contradicts himself in one sentence, and on your bingo podcast, bingo card, now is the time. I do think that we have too much of a need as a group to keep lodges going, even when maybe they should go away. That said, I would fight to keep my lodge alive, and maybe it's a NIMBY thing. I would want my lodge to continue, and I'm willing to fight to have it continue. So maybe I don't really feel that way when the rubber meets the road.
That is a total NIMBY thing, because well, actually, it's not so much a NIMBY thing as it's a comfort thing. Your lodge, it's your lodge. It's very hard to trust me, I've been there. It's very hard to separate the greater need and from this lodge has been around for 110 years, and it's really sad to see it go. And I'm like, yeah, well, sometimes you got to pull the plug on Grandpa because his quality of life just isn't there.
So, and on the note of pulling the plug on Grandpa, I think maybe this conversation has run its course for today. Well, there you go. On behalf of Jarrod and Stephen and myself and David, thank you all for listening to the Working Tools podcast. As always, please feel free to comment on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you find our awesome diatribes, and we will be happy to interact with you or listen if you have suggestions, etc. So please let us know. And with that, thank you all for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again on the Working Tools podcast. Goodbye.